I'm trying to get my ultralight hiking setup as light as possible so that I can go for longer and move faster when I'm out in the mountains. In order to do that, I've got to sacrifice some comfort, what I'm eating, and even my safety. Here are 10 ultralight tips that I use that you'll probably hate. These tips are definitely not for everyone, but if you're looking to save even more weight or move quicker in the mountains, they might just be for you. My first tip that you'll probably hate is to get yourself a closed cell foam mat to sleep on. Then cut off only the number of panels you'll need to cover your torso length. For me, that's 6 panels. You can also shave off some of the width of your mat to save even more weight. Now a mat like this isn't going to be nearly as comfortable as an inflatable option, but with only 6 panels, it's a lot lighter and they're on indestructible. It also doesn't take up any room inside my pack because I strap it to the outside, and on a 22-liter pack like this, where space is a premium, that's definitely a game changer. So to go along with my very minimal sleeping mat, I've also got a very ultralight tarp shelter. Packs down to absolutely nothing and it only weighs about 170 grams. I made this tarp shelter myself and I've got a whole video on it if you're interested. So the advantages of this tarp shelter is that it's going to pack down and be lighter than any tent. The downside to that is you do get a lot less protection, it's more open to the elements, to the bugs, and it requires a bit more skill to set up. The cool thing about a tarp though is that the setups can be very versatile. You don't just have to pitch it one way like you would a tent. You can change your setup or pitch depending on the terrain or environment you're in. You could also make adjustments to your shelter to better protect you from the elements. I'm a big fan of tarp shelters, but it's definitely not something everyone's going to enjoy. I know a lot of people enjoy being able to crawl inside their tent and feel like that's protecting them from anything outside. And it is a nice feeling to have that sort of cozy wee home outdoors. But with a tarp shelter, you're going to be a lot more open, a lot more exposed, but it's a really cool feeling to wake up in the morning covered by only the shelter and protection that you need. So yeah, for my really ultralight setup, I like to bring a tarp instead of a tent. Alrighty, so far I've got a torso length sleeping mat and a very ultralight tarp shelter. And aside from my sleeping bag and pillow, I don't really have anything else to go with that. The main thing I'd be missing is a ground sheet, and I don't tend to carry one these days. My sleeping mat insulates and keeps the top half of my body off the ground, and I use the rubbish bag that I line my pack with, as well as my pack, to keep my sleeping bag off the ground so that it doesn't get super dirty. This setup works pretty well for me. The main thing I have to be wary of is drainage of the ground and making sure I'm not in an area it's going to get super soggy if it does rain. But I wouldn't really recommend camping in those areas anyway. Now I see this one being debated a lot, but personally, if I want to move faster out in the mountains, I'm always going to pick trail runners over boots. Now both these types of footwear have pros and cons. Trail runners are going to be a lot more breathable, they're going to dry quicker, and they're going to be a lot lighter on your feet. The downside to them is that you don't get as much support and they're not as durable as most types of boots. On the other hand, boots are going to help to provide more support and they're going to last longer, especially if you're in rocky, harsh terrain. Most boots tend to be waterproof as well, which can be really helpful if you're walking through wet grass or even snow, but any sort of river crossing and they're going to get waterlogged and be even heavier. They're also going to take a lot longer to dry than a pair of shoes. Here in New Zealand, it can be very hard to avoid river crossings, and chances are that you're going to come across at least one crossing on your trip. Regardless of what type of footwear you're wearing, they're probably going to get wet, and that's where trail runners that dry a lot quicker are my preferred choice. Now boots definitely do have their place. I like to use them in more alpine or mountaineering situations where I want the support, insulation, and waterproofness. But if it's any hiking or fast packing trip where doing big distances is the goal, then I'm always going to choose my trail runners. Side note, I'm currently wearing the Asics Ultralight 6s for my trips, and I've been a big fan of them so far. Now from a safety point of view, this is probably not the best idea, but I carry a very minimal first aid kit when I'm out in the backcountry. My first aid kit pretty much consists of a few different types of plasters, some ibuprofen, tenacious tape, and a little Swiss Army knife. Now a lot of you might disagree with this, but if I get into a situation that I can't fix with some ibuprofen or some plasters, then it's probably not a situation I really want to be in out in the backcountry, and I'm probably going to be using my PLB anyway. Any minor cuts or scrapes I can handle with the supplies I'm carrying, and even if it was a bigger wound, I could always improvise something out of the clothing I'm carrying. But anything worse than that that's going to require specialist medical supplies, I'm probably just going to be getting myself out of there, whether that's bailing to the nearest road or using my PLB. Like I said at the start, I am sacrificing a little bit of my safety with going this light, but personally, for me, it's a sacrifice and a risk that I'm willing to accept. Touch wood, but I've never been seriously injured when I've been in the outdoors, and hopefully I can keep it that way. Now, I've made a whole video about my clothing system that I wear for these types of trips. You can check it out up there if you're interested, but I do take very minimal clothing with me. I don't carry any spare clothes apart from my insulating layers and my rain jacket. I don't even carry or wear any underwear. The shorts that I hike in have a built-in liner, and that works really well for me. Now, I go into more detail about my layers in my longer video, but basically my whole setup is geared around moving quickly and to keep moving. I don't have a bunch of extra warm layers to put on while I'm sitting around at camp. It's not really what this setup's designed for. I'm either moving and generating my own body heat, and when I'm at camp, I put the rest of my clothes on. My layering system can put me in a little bit of a tricky spot if the weather were to turn really bad or if it got really cold, but in those situations, I would most likely just keep moving until I found somewhere that I could shelter from the weather. Now, if you've ever hiked in New Zealand, you're probably quite familiar with a wee little black bug called a sandfly. They'll definitely make themselves known if you stop for even just a quick break, and you'll find yourself swatting at any patch of bare or exposed skin and wanting to keep moving to try to get away from them. A lot of people's solution to this is to carry bug spray, and while it can do a pretty good job, I'm not a huge fan of bringing it with me on these trips, as it's another thing for me to spend time applying. It adds weight to my pack, and I just don't like putting it on, especially when I'm all sweaty and grubby. My solution to that is to carry a bug head net. This one's from Cedar Summit, and the mesh is fine enough that the bugs won't get through, but I can still see through it nice and easily. I can wear it while I'm hiking, at camp, and even while I'm sleeping. I pair this with my long sleeve layers on my arms and legs, put my hoods on, and I'm pretty much fully covered and the sandflies can't get to me. I actually find this tactic to be more effective than bug spray, and I'm happy to sleep with this on my face. It doesn't bother me at all. This system also works really well with my tarp, as I don't get any form of bug protection from that type of shelter. The one nice thing about that is that I don't have to quickly try dive into my tent and zip up the fly quickly and hope that I didn't get any bugs inside. Now, I think we can all agree that having a nice warm meal at the end of a long day's tramp can make a huge difference to morale and give you that nice boost of energy. But for my ultralight kit, I tend to cold soak. This container weighs a heck of a lot less than even the lightest pot and stove setup that I could carry. An even lighter option still would be to not cold soak anything and just eat things like bars, but even I'm not that extreme yet. In this, I can cold soak a lot of freeze-dried and dehydrated meals. It just takes a bit longer, but I throw the food in here, pour the water in, and carry it for a few hours, and when I get to camp, my meal is all ready to go. It's definitely not as nice as a warm freeze-dried meal, but I don't find it to be super horrible, and I'm happy to do it if it saves me weight in my pack. I also find it's more time efficient as well, and on bigger trips where I'm trying to cover a lot of distance in a day, not having to mess around with a stove and cooking system can make a big difference. Now, this ultralight tip, I think a lot of people could actually relate to, but I don't know how many of us want to admit it, but my map and compass skills are not exactly advanced. When I go on these trips, I don't carry any form of paper map or a physical compass. Instead, I rely on my phone and my Chorus watch to navigate. For me personally, it's a lot quicker, easier, and lighter than carrying a map and a compass. Knowing how to use a map and a compass can be a very important skill. And although I know the basics, I would like to get more proficient at it someday. But in this day and age where I can load all my maps on this tiny computer on my wrist and it tells me where I am in a matter of seconds, I'm less inclined to try and navigate with more traditional methods, especially when I want to move quickly in the mountains. Now, I'm sure someone's going to say that these pieces of technology could die or break on me, but so could a map and a compass. I could drop the compass, lose it, break it, crack it. The map could get wet, it could fly away, it could tear. I don't particularly think that either method is more reliable in that case. My last ultralight tip is to use a frameless pack. This is the Black Diamond Distance 22, and I really love it for an ultralight fast packing bag. It fits my gear really nicely, and I've done up to 4 days in this thing. Now, this pack is not only just frameless, but it also doesn't have a hip belt. All the weight in this pack is carried through my shoulders, which is even more of a reason for me to try and get my setup as light as possible. Frameless packs, especially without a hip belt, aren't going to be nearly as supportive or distribute weight as well as a framed pack, but they do tend to be a lot lighter. And for me, especially when my setup weighs just over 3 kilos, I'm not really too worried about having that additional support. Hip belts can also be nice because they have pockets, so you can put snacks or access your phone or things you need to reach throughout the day. But that problem is solved for me with this type of pack because this is a vest style pack, so I can access everything I need to on the front of this harness. I put soft water flasks in the front, and I can access my phone and snacks throughout the day. The one main thing I have to be careful of is how I pack everything in the bag, because if I pack things haphazardly, there's a chance that I'll have something digging into my back while I'm trying to hike. I use these tips because some of them reduce a significant amount of weight from my pack, and they also make my life a lot simpler when I'm out in the mountains. I'm confident enough in my abilities to accept these sacrifices in comfort, food, and safety. But like I said at the start of the video, they're definitely not going to be for everyone. But I hope they've given you some insights into ways that you could potentially save more weight in your pack. And I hope they've provided you with some reasons as to why I carry the things that I do in my pack. If you have any other tips that you think aren't exactly ordinary, or not something everyone's going to enjoy, then I'd love for you to leave a comment down below. I'm always keen to hear what other people carry and their thought processes behind it. If you want to see a trip where I did carry a bit more gear and was quite a bit more comfortable, then check out this one up here. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.